My Own Private Idaho is a 1991 drama directed by Gus Van Sant.
Yep, it's the story of Mike and Scott, two best friends who also happen to be male prostitutes or hustlers. Mike is played by River Phoenix and Scott by Keanu Reeves. And yeah, it's kind of their tale of their life kind of on the streets and what they get up to. Yeah, Mike is he's kind of almost a drifter, really, isn't he? Doesn't really have a home, yeah. And more importantly, he also has narcolepsy, which, if you don't know what that means, you're prone to just falling asleep on the spot. And for that reason, that the way the film works, we kind of, every time he falls asleep, we then cut to when he wakes up. So it can be a bit disorientating for him, and also for the audience as well, because suddenly he's somewhere completely different, and he doesn't know how we got there, and neither do we. Yeah, so he's pretty miserable with his existence, and when he does fall asleep, he kind of has sort of visions or dreams of his mother, who abandoned him, a long time ago, and he doesn't know where she is. Scott, while he's kind of living the same kind of life, he's completely different in that he's the son of the mayor of Portland. Obviously, part of a wealthy family, but he's just completely rejected that and has no interest in his family or his father, even though he's set to inherit a lot of money. But before he does that, he's just living the life in the way that he wants to, which for some reason is to live on the streets and do drugs and be a hustler. So yeah, we follow these two and their various friends of theirs. There's sort of a mentor to all of them called Bob, who's obviously slightly older, a bit of an alcoholic, played by William Richard. Yeah, and the story is kind of very loosely based on Shakespeare's Henry IV. And a bit of Henry V, I think, as well.
At the end, yeah.
And more for Scott rather than Mike. And even some of the dialogue, I would say, it reminded me a little bit sometimes of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. The way obviously it's got it's in a contemporary setting, but kind of the way some of the dialogue is put across is almost like it's a little bit Shakespeare.
And obviously Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet is Shakespeare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what. But I mean, the way that it's not a traditional.
No. I know. Yeah, I know. You mean in a way, it's actually. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised actually if Baz Luhrmann was inspired by this film because it's quite. It's that kind of, it's urban.
Yeah.
For a start, and it's that kind of shouty. I mean, I know Shakespeare is quite shouty.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the way it feels, kind of a modern kind of anarchic shouting of it, which I think is similar to Private Idaho. I suppose we should back up a little bit and because it's Pride, isn't it? It's Pride.
Yes,
June,
Pride Month. Yeah.
Which is why we've decided to do this film.
And also, Keanu Reeves is having a bit of a sort of renaissance at the moment with.
He's got.
He's in obviously a new John Wick film. He's in Toy Story 4.
There's this game that he's suddenly
he's in
Cyberpunk 2077.
That's the one.
I might have got that wrong, but I think that's the one.
Yeah, that's it. And obviously they've just started filming Bill and Ted 3 as well. So, and he's just, whenever you see him in an interview, he just seems like a really down-to-earth, nice guy.
Yeah, I've always liked, I think the trouble, just to veer off subject slightly, I think the thing with Keanu is a lot of people kind of can be quite scathing about it. I mean, I think Keanu Reeves is really good at this. I think he clearly seems to be relishing his role.
He does, he does have the ability to do dramatic. And I think obviously he's got the sort of kind of typecast as like a surfer dude after Bill and Ted.
He always
Point Break.
that.
Yeah. But before this, he made River's Edge, which we covered a while ago, and it's not a completely dissimilar role.
No, kind of street hand. And I think actually he based that role. He based that part on similar territory that he based this part, and that was Street Kids on the streets of Toronto, where he grew up. So Gus Van Sant was writing a screenplay about gay hustlers in the 80s, and he saw the film Chimes of Midnight, which is an Orson Welles film, which itself is a kind of an adaptation of a Shakespeare play. I think it was also titled Falstaff. And when Gus Van Sant saw that, he decided to then take this screenplay that he was writing and kind of make it a loose adaptation of Shakespeare's Henry IV and a little bit of Henry V. And so there are scenes in there that are there's no actual full Shakespeare dialogue,
No.
but there, like you said, there are scenes that feel quite Shakespeare-like. The way it's performed, there's a couple of scenes in there that I feel like you're watching a play.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. I think quite interesting camera movements and whatnot. Bob, the character Bob, is actually a kind of a Falstaffian character. He's kind of he's big and he's heavy and he drinks and he's maybe a bit of a coward because he's kind of he feels like he can rule everyone and mentor them, but on the flip side of that, he can be kind of taken for a ride and is a bit of a coward as well. And then Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who is in there as well, is kind of playing his page and kind of follows him around and stuff like that. So that's kind of your Shakespeare link, and there's some quite interesting sequences in there that use the maybe the Shakespeare dialogue. I think some people found it maybe a bit pretentious because it's not an actual Shakespeare film, whereas a lot of people really enjoyed it and they liked it for what it is. And they, as a Gus Van Sant movie, it's a really good Gus Van Sant movie. I really enjoy it. I've seen it a number of times. I really like Keanu Reeves and big fan of River Phoenix. I think this is one of his kind of standout performances next to Stand By Me. I think they're similar. I think River Phoenix is kind of one of those actors. Obviously, if you don't know, he passed away quite soon after this was made.
93.
It was 93, yeah, that's right. So he was, one of those actors that they kind of spoke about being like the next big thing. I mean, he was an amazing actor.
Yeah.
Although there were rumours that he was maybe going to give up acting after this. I don't know. Or soon after this. But he kind of. I mean, Stand By Me in this role is kind of similar. Playing these drifter type characters, kind of lost souls, lonely characters. Which is, that that idea is quite, comes up a lot in American cinema, drifting across America and not quite knowing where you fit in or where you belong or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think River Phoenix portrays that really well. This is clearly about that, and I think that's what's interesting about this film is that the difference between Scott and Mike, like you said, Mike is obviously the drifter, and Scott comes from this rich family. And another thing I should point out that obviously Scott's character, Keanu Reeves' character Scott, is not actually gay. He just sells his money. He just does it for the money. And there's a really poignant scene in this film, and in fact, I was reading that it's quite an important scene because before this, they're almost portrayed as victims of homosexuality. There's a scene earlier on in the film where they're talking about their first hustles, and some of them have been raped and things like that. And then later on, there's quite a heavy scene with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix around a campfire when they're talking about more kind of love. And River Phoenix clearly has a thing for Keanu Reeves' character, but he doesn't respond. He doesn't.
Not reciprocated.
No, exactly, because he's not actually gay, and it's quite an emotional scene, I think. Again, it kind of reminded me of the campfire scene in Stand By Me with River Phoenix, that he kind of really just acts everyone off the screen on. So I think it's a really interesting film. This, obviously Gus Van Sant has made some very good films during his career. I think some of them are slightly arty. I think he's in a kind of art house terrain, maybe not too art house, but there's definitely things there. But then he also does quite straight films as well. I mean, he made To Die For that we covered before with Nicole Kidman, and River Phoenix's brother Joaquin Phoenix.
Going back to how you say this is, does some art house stuff. I mean, this film in particular has a lot of different styles of shots.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of sex scenes in there, but they're not your traditional.
No, they're like stills.
Yeah, I mean they are. I think the actors are just staying still, aren't they?
They're staying
so they're not
still.
actually
No,
stills.
they're not still.
They film them like they're stills.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminded me a bit of Fight Club.
Right.
The sex scenes in that, where I mean, I think they're pretty much CGI, but that's what immediately it reminded me of. So lots of interesting
there's
things to look at and different ways to film things, and all the these sort of dream sequences that Mike has when he falls asleep with his narcolepsy. They are really dreamlike, the way they're filmed.
Yeah.
And I think there's like some time lapse, I think.
There is definitely
included as well.
Yeah,
so there's all sorts of different things going on.
And then there's that great scene with the when they're all on the magazine.
Rack, that was good. Yeah,
where they're all talking about the kind of Keanu Reeves is talking about modelling and then sexuality and all that, and it wasn't done with CGI. It was actually they stood on a background and had the words printed out, and then they put them on, kind of like the old matte painting, and that's how they did that. So it wasn't any CGI, because in those days CGI was extremely expensive to use. Yeah. And I don't imagine they had a huge budget for this film.
I think it was $2.5 million. I think so. Not a lot.
No, so but I think it's I like how it's filmed. It's very playful. That's what I like about this. I find some of the acting scenes are very playful. There's a great moment where all the hustlers live. They live in a kind of this abandoned building, but they filmed it in a number of different abandoned buildings, and cut it together. So an actor would walk through one door, and when he came out of the door, it would be filmed somewhere else. And River Phoenix, being the crazy actor he was, he'd give himself he'd walk through in a certain way, or cough or sneeze or something, and then he'd then have to remember that and then do that when they went and filmed the coming out of the door somewhere else. And I think it just goes to show how much of an interesting actor he was, and such a shame that he died so young. Because
I think watching this, I think it just shows what potential he had. To just like you say, to be the next big thing.
But what I did like actually is, out of all the actors, the one that Gus Van Sant I think had the most fun with was Flea from the Chili Peppers. He said Flea was absolutely insane and would do anything he was told to do. And he actually made mention of, he said, if you ever seen the film Suburbia, where he basically puts a rat down his throat, which of course we did cover.
We did, yeah.
Shout out to
and
Suburbia.
And he was in The Chase, which is our very first
He
video.
was in The Chase as well, yes. So there's apparently there's a debut performance from Jim Caviezel.
Yes.
I couldn't spot him. He plays an airline clerk. And Gus Van Sant himself is actually in the film. He plays a hotel bellboy, I think, kind of midway during the film. But there's also there's an actress, Grace Zabriskie, who there's a great scene right near the beginning of the film, where River Phoenix he gets like a hustle, I suppose, but this time it's a woman. So a woman pulls up and kind of asks him back to her place. But then when he gets there, that's when you're then introduced to Scott, Keanu Reeves, for the first time, and it turns out that she needs 3 young men to kind of get her in the mood for a sexual, fun night of sex.
Indeed.
Yeah, indeed. But so Grace Zabriskie is mostly famous. She was in Twin Peaks, and she was great in Twin Peaks as well. And she's quite a quirky actor, but she's great. And that whole sequence is, I just really enjoy that whole sequence. And then River Phoenix falls asleep on her.
So I hadn't seen it before.
Oh really?
No. Yeah, I liked it. I think the plot is kind of sidelined. It's not a great deal to the plot really. It's more about these characters and their journey, and the point of where they're going is a little bit inconsequential really. And I think perhaps without if it wasn't as interesting to watch and the performances weren't as good, I think maybe it wouldn't have engaged with it as much, because it doesn't. It goes somewhere, but not really.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's not.
It doesn't follow like a plot.
No.
So to speak.
It's almost a series of just scenes that put together, and there is sort of a little bit of a thread in the background, mainly to do with Mike's mother, but it's barely there for most of the film.
Yeah, it jumps into that kind of midway when he goes back and he meets who he thinks is his father, might be his father, and there's a whole section with that, and then they go off to. It's not a spoiler. They go off to Rome in search for his mother. When it kind of becomes a slight road movie, and then it also kind of becomes quite a European movie as well. If you watch a lot of you know a lot of European cinema, when they go to Italy, it kind of takes on kind of a new person. So I think it's kind of like I said, it's quite kind of experimental. It's not that experimental, but. It kind of it jumps around, it plays with ideas, and
that's particularly that last section. I found it difficult to buy into them even being in Italy.
Yeah, sure.
These characters, I couldn't see them being there. It was a bit odd. Hanging around with Udo Kier in a hotel room, dancing around. Yeah, I bought into that.
Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed it, and I can appreciate it, and particularly the performances, and River Phoenix is phenomenal in it, and definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's probably quite a personal film for Gus Van Sant. I mean, Gus Van Sant is gay, and I think he wrote it on people he knew or people he'd met during the 80s. But so I think this film is possibly kind of a reflection of Gus Van Sant. Maybe he felt like how River Phoenix felt when he was younger. I don't know, but yeah. So I think it's worth checking out if you've not seen this film, definitely. Yeah. And you obviously have it.
Well, yes, I got the DVD.
Your wife had it.
Yep, it's a DVD. I mean, this is from years ago. I mean, it's actually been released by Criterion as well.
Yeah,
so
in America. Not here.
Not here. No, I don't think so. No, I mean you can get it on Blu-ray, but it's not. Yeah, it's not the Criterion one. I don't know if it's got any features on it. Actually, I don't think it has.
Right. Yeah, I've got that one myself.
Yeah. So this is a 2-disc set. I mean, I think a lot of what's on here is the same as what's on the Criterion. Obviously, Criterion is Blu-ray, so it'll be nice and restored, etc., etc. I mean, the picture on this wasn't terrible. I thought it was going to be pretty bad, but it was actually okay. So I'm sure this isn't hard to find, but yeah, it's readily available on Criterion if you want to go that way. So
have you seen it streaming anywhere, or?
I looked, I couldn't find it. I mean, I don't have Netflix now, so I don't know. But no, it certainly wasn't on Amazon. It wasn't on Now TV. So, well, I think you could buy it on Amazon, but it's not. You can't. It's not free with Prime or anything like that.
So that was My Private Idaho. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Yep, hit the subscribe button up there if you've liked what you've watched, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there, and come and find us on Twitter and Facebook. And come back next week for another one.